The vast emptiness of space swallowed the light of distant stars as the Eos Eternum cut through the void. Captain Elira Voss stood at the command bridge, her silhouette stark against the panoramic view of the approaching planet. Viordax loomed before them, a swirling mass of angry clouds and jagged continents, its atmosphere a turbulent canvas of violets and crimson that seemed to pulse with malevolence. "We've reached the coordinates, Captain," announced the navigation officer, his voice betraying the fear they all felt. Viordax, the legendary Deathworld. Elira's fingers traced the ancient pendant hanging at her neck, the last gift from her father before the council took him. The weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders like a physical burden. Behind her, sealed within the massive generation ship, were the last 5,000 free humans in existence. The final remnants of a species that once ruled a quarter of the galaxy. "Begin orbital approach procedures," she commanded, her voice steady despite the turmoil within. "And alert the landing team to prepare for surface reconnaissance." The year was 3810, nearly 2 centuries after the great collapse of the Galactic Alliance. Humanity, once a founding member of that interstellar coalition, had fallen from grace. The reasons were lost to propaganda and time, but the consequences remained. Mankind hunted to near extinction, their colonies systematically purged, their legacy erased from the annals of galactic history. The Eos Eternum carried the last free humans, refugees who had escaped the purge by fleeing to the Outer Rim. For decades, they had drifted from system to system, always one step ahead of the Void Collectors, the relentless hunters tasked with completing humanity's extinction. Resources were dwindling, and the ship's systems were failing. They needed a home. And now, they had arrived at their final hope, coordinates encoded in ancient human star charts, supposedly a sanctuary world. But the charts had failed to mention one critical detail. Their sanctuary was Viordax, the planet that had claimed the lives of countless civilizations before them. "Captain," called Dr. Nira Helix, the ship's chief biologist. Her dark eyes reflected concern as she approached Elira's command station. "The preliminary scans are confusing. The biosphere readings are unlike anything in our database. The radiation levels alone should make the planet uninhabitable. Yet there are clear signs of complex life." Elira nodded, unsurprised. The legends say Viordax devours civilizations, that it tests them and finds them wanting. "You don't actually believe those stories?" Nira asked, her scientific mind rebelling against such superstition. Before Elira could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. The ship shuddered violently, throwing several crew members to the floor. Emergency lights flashed as systems across the vessel began to shut down. "Report," Elira commanded, gripping her station to remain upright. "Unknown energy signature from the planet's surface," shouted the sensor officer. It's like nothing I've ever seen. Some kind of targeted EMP, but infinitely more sophisticated. All navigation and propulsion systems are offline. We're locked in orbit." "Life support?" Elira demanded. "Functioning, but on auxiliary power. Whatever hit us knew exactly what to disable and what to leave intact." Elira's gaze returned to the ominous planet below. "It wasn't an attack," she said quietly. "It was an invitation." The bridge fell silent as the implications settled over them. They were trapped in orbit around the most notorious death world in galactic lore, with no means of escape. The ship's scanners detected a signal pulsing from the planet's surface, regular, artificial, and undeniably deliberate. Lance Bren, the head of security, stepped forward. His imposing frame and scarred face reflected a lifetime of fighting for humanity's survival. "Captain, we can't stay here. The Void Collectors will eventually track us. if we're trapped when they arrive. I know. Illyra cut him off. We have no choice. Prepare a landing party. We need to find the source of that signal and neutralize it if we're to have any hope of regaining control of the ship. Who would you like on the team? Lance asked, already calculating the odds of survival in his head. You, Dr. Helix, for biological analysis, myself. Captain, Lance interrupted. With respect, your place is here with the ship. I can lead the ground team. Illyra shook her head firmly. The ancient charts that led us here were passed down through my family line for generations. There are symbols and inscriptions I might recognize that others wouldn't. And besides, she added with a grim smile, if this truly is humanity's final stand, I won't hide up here while others face our fate. Hours later, the landing shuttle cut through Vir Dax's turbulent atmosphere. Illyra sat beside Nira, both secured in their environmental suits. Lance and 6 other security personnel completed the team, each armed with the best weapons humanity's dwindling resources could provide. The descent was brutal. Atmospheric turbulence battered the shuttle like an angry god, threatening to tear it apart at any moment. The viewport revealed glimpses of a world both familiar and alien, vast forests with canopies that shimmered metallically in the dusky light, mountains that seemed to shift and change shape even as they watched, oceans that glowed with bioluminescence, visible even from the upper atmosphere. The signal is coming from a structure approximately 20 kilometers from our landing zone, reported the pilot, fighting to maintain control of the shuttle. Topography suggests it's situated in a valley between 2 mountain ranges. Any signs of active technology or defenses? Lance asked. Nothing registering on our scanners, but given what happened to the EOS. The pilot left the implication hanging. The shuttle broke through the cloud cover, and the true face of Vir Dax revealed itself. Below them stretched a landscape that defied conventional understanding of planetary ecosystems. The forests they had glimpsed from above were composed of trees with metallic bark and leaves that moved independently, seeming to track the shuttle's descent like predators watching prey. Rivers of what appeared to be liquid mercury cut through the terrain, feeding into a sea that pulsed with rhythmic waves, as if the entire body of water were a single, breathing organism. Most disturbing were the ruins scattered across the landscape, remnants of civilization not from one alien culture, but dozens. Architectural styles clashed and merged, crystalline spires next to monolithic stone structures, biological habitats fused with mechanical cities, all abandoned, all reclaimed by the voracious ecosystem of Vir Dax. By the stars, whispered Nira. It's like a graveyard of civilizations. The shuttle landed with a heavy thud in a relatively clear area. The team performed final checks on their environmental suits. The atmosphere, while technically breathable, contained compounds unknown to human science, and no one was willing to risk exposure. Illyra was the first to step onto the surface of Vir Dax. The soil beneath her boots had an unsettling give to it, almost as if it were reacting to her weight. She activated her suit's sensors, collecting data that was immediately transmitted back to the Eos Eternum. Movement in the tree line, Lance warned, his weapon raised. 12 o'clock, about 50 meters out. The team formed a defensive perimeter as shapes emerged from the metallic forest. They were quadrupedal creatures, each the size of a large earth wolf, but the similarities ended there. Their bodies seemed to be composed of a combination of organic tissue and raw minerals, with crystalline growths protruding from their spines. Most disturbing were their heads, featureless except for a circular maw lined with rotating teeth, like organic drill bits. Don't fire unless they attack, Illyra commanded. We need to understand this world, not fight it. The creatures approached cautiously, surrounding the landing party but maintaining distance. They moved with eerie coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. "They're scanning us," Naira said, checking her instruments. "Their crystalline structures are emitting some kind of radiation. It's almost like they're taking readings." One of the creatures suddenly stopped, its head tilting in an almost curious manner. Then, as one, the entire pack retreated back into the forest. That was unexpected," Lance muttered. "They were just the welcoming committee," Illyra replied, pointing toward the horizon where the signal originated. "Our real host is waiting ahead." The journey through Dax was a trek through a biological nightmare. The team witnessed plants that consumed metal, extracting it from the soil and their equipment if they lingered too long in one place. They passed creatures that seemed to feed on radiation, gathering around natural hotspots in the terrain like earth animals at a watering hole. Most disturbing were the moments when the land itself seemed alive, shifting subtly beneath their feet, redirecting them when they strayed too far from their path toward the signal. "It's hurting us," Nira observed after the third time a sudden ridge had appeared, blocking an alternate route. The entire ecosystem is coordinated. After hours of trekking, they crested a hill and saw their destination. In the valley below stood a structure unlike the ruins they had passed, while those had been decayed and overrun by Dax's aggressive ecosystem. This building stood pristine, a perfect hexagonal pyramid of black material that absorbed light rather than reflected it. No vegetation encroached upon it. No animals ventured near. Most shocking of all were the symbols etched into its surface. "Those are human characters," Illyra whispered in disbelief. "Ancient Earth script, Sanskrit, Greek, Egyptian hieroglyphs. But that's impossible. Humans never colonized this world. It was sealed off by the Galactic Council long before mankind achieved interstellar travel." As they approached the structure, a seam appeared in its previously seamless surface. A doorway formed, opening into darkness. "It's inviting us in," Lance said, his voice heavy with suspicion. "Or it's a trap," countered one of his security team. Illyra studied the doorway, then the symbols surrounding it. "These inscriptions, they speak of judgment, of tests and trials." She took a deep breath, but also of rebirth. Whatever awaits us inside, it knows we're human, and it's been expecting us. The interior of the pyramid was illuminated by soft blue light that seemed to emanate from the material of the walls themselves. The team moved through corridors that branched and converged in patterns that defied Euclidean geometry. Sometimes they would turn a corner only to find themselves in a section they had already passed through, despite having moved consistently forward. "The structure is reconfiguring itself," Naira observed, "or it's manipulating our perception." Finally, they entered a vast central chamber. Unlike the corridors, this room was perfectly circular, its walls lined with displays showing scenes from different worlds, or perhaps different eras of the same world. In the center stood a platform, and upon it, a figure materialized. It appeared humanoid but was clearly artificial, a construct of light and matter that shifted between solid and translucent. Its features were an unsettling amalgamation of various species, as if it couldn't decide on a single form to present. "Welcome, Seventh Defendant," it spoke, its voice reverberating not through the air, but directly in their minds. "I am Calyx, the guardian intelligence of judgment. You have arrived as the patterns foretold." Illyra stepped forward. "We came seeking sanctuary. Our ship has been disabled." "By my systems." "Yes." Calyx interrupted. "The trial cannot commence if the defendants may flee." "Trial," Lance's hand moved to his weapon. We've committed no crime against this world. The entity's form shifted, briefly taking on aspects that resembled ancient human judges in ceremonial robes before returning to its composite appearance. You speak in ignorance, human. 6 civilizations before yours came to Virdax seeking conquest or refuge. 6 failed the trials and were judged unworthy of survival. Yours is the 7th. Displays around the chamber flickered to life, showing scenes of various alien species arriving on Virdax. Each scene ended with devastation, civilizations torn apart not by external forces, but by their own actions when faced with the planet's challenges. This world is not merely a planet. Calyx continued. It is a test, designed eons ago by those who saw the pattern of rise and fall, of species who achieve greatness only to destroy themselves and others. Virdax evaluates worthiness to continue. Who created you? Nera asked. Who gave you the right to judge entire species? Calyx's form shimmered. The architects are long gone, transcended beyond the material realm. I remain as their instrument, their legacy. As for rights, it is not about right, but necessity. Species that cannot pass Virdax's trials invariably go on to commit cosmic atrocities if allowed to spread unchecked. And humanity? Illyra asked. What crime have we committed to deserve judgment? Your ancestors knew of Virdax. They were among the founding species of what you called the Galactic Alliance. They helped create the protocols that sealed this world away, not out of wisdom, but fear. They chose dominion over harmony, control over understanding. This revelation struck Illyra like a physical blow. The ancient star charts that had guided them here weren't a path to sanctuary. They were a warning. A boundary her ancestors had helped establish, then later encoded as coordinates to be avoided. Jail. But we're not our ancestors, she argued. The humans on my ship are refugees, survivors. We've lost everything. Yet you still carry the seeds of the same destructive patterns. Calyx replied, Unless proven otherwise, that is the purpose of the trial. The entity gestured, and a holographic display appeared, showing the Eos Eternum in orbit. Your vessel contains the last free members of your species. The judgment will determine not just your fate, but humanity's right to continue. What is this trial? Lance demanded. Combat? Riddles? What game are you playing? Not a game, a test of essence. Calyx's form expanded, encompassing the entire chamber in its glow. 3 days from now, Virdax will experience what you might call an ash thunder night, a natural biological surge that transforms the entire biosphere into a lethal environment for 72 hours. It is the planet's natural cycle of renewal. You expect us to survive that? Nera asked incredulously. I expect you to demonstrate whether humanity deserves to survive it. Calyx corrected. You may return to your ship and depart the surface before the cycle begins, dooming yourselves to a slow death in space as your resources fail. Or you may attempt to endure the ash thunder night here, proving your species' worthiness. And if we succeed, Illyra asked, then Virdax will become your home. Its defenses will shield you from those who hunt your kind. Its resources will sustain you if you learn to live in harmony with them rather than attempting to conquer them as your ancestors did with so many worlds. Calyx's form began to fade. You have 24 hours to decide and prepare. Choose wisely. 7th Defendant. The trial begins regardless of your choice. As the entity vanished, the structure around them trembled. The entrance through which they had come reappeared, now showing the landscape outside. We need to return to the Eos and report this, Lance said urgently. Illyra nodded, but her mind was racing. a test of survival against a planetary-scale biological event, the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. And the revelation that her ancestors, humanity's forebears, had been complicit in creating the very system now judging them. The journey back to the shuttle was tense with unspoken fears. The landscape seemed even more alien now that they understood its purpose. Every shifting hill, every creature that observed them from a distance, all were part of an elaborate testing ground designed to evaluate entire civilizations. As they approached the landing site, one of the security team suddenly stopped, pointing to the shuttle. "Captain, something's wrong. The hatch is open." Lance raised his weapon, signaling the team to spread out and approach cautiously. When they reached the shuttle, they found its communication system active. "Someone sent a transmission," Lance reported, checking the logs. "Unauthorized. Tight beam. Directed out of the system." "To whom?" Illyra demanded, though she already feared the answer. Lance's expression confirmed her worst suspicions. "The encryption pattern matches known void collector frequencies. Someone just told our hunters exactly where to find us." All eyes turned to the security team. One of them, a younger officer named Tarek, stood slightly apart, his posture rigid with tension. "Captain, he began, but Lance moved with practiced efficiency, disarming him before he could reach for his weapon. "Why?" Illyra asked, the single word heavy with the weight of betrayal. Tarek's eyes hardened. "The collectors promised amnesty for informants. Humanity had its chance to rule the stars, and we failed. The smart play is to join the winning side." "The winning side?" Nira's voice shook with rage. "They're exterminating us." "Most of us," Tarek corrected. "Those who prove useful can earn citizenship in the new order. My family will be safe." Lance's grip on the traitor tightened. "Your family died 3 years ago in the Procyon Purge. You told us yourself." A cold smile spread across Tarek's face. "A convenient story to gain your trust. My actual family is quite safe, serving as cultural artifacts in the Collector archives. Soon I'll join them. The price of their continued comfort is just 5,000 obsolete lives." Illyra stepped forward, her expression not of anger but profound pity. "How long until they arrive?" 3 days, Tarek replied with satisfaction. "Just in time to witness your failure in this so-called trial. 3 days, the same time frame as the Ash Thunder Night. The coincidence was too perfect to be chance." Calyx knew. Illyra realized. The entity knew we had a traitor, knew the collectors were coming. This isn't just a test of survival against the planet. It's a race against our executioners. The revelation transformed their predicament. No longer was this merely about proving humanity's worthiness to an ancient judgment system. It was their last, desperate chance for survival. Back aboard the Eos Eternum, Illyra called an emergency council of the ship's department heads. The enormous vessel, once a marvel of human engineering, now felt like a prison, or worse, a coffin. 5,000 souls trapped in orbit around a Deathworld, with extinction approaching from the stars. "We have 2 threats," Illyra explained to the assembled leaders. "In 3 days, the Void Collectors will arrive, and simultaneously, the planet below will undergo a biological apocalypse called the Ash Thunder Night. Calyx, the guardian intelligence of Virdax, has offered us a choice. Attempt to survive the planetary event and earn the right to call this world home, or remain in space and face certain death." "This is insanity," argued the chief engineer. "We can't risk our entire population on some alien test. We should try to repair the ship, break free of whatever's holding us here." "We've been trying since the energy pulse hit us," responded the systems officer. Whatever disabled our systems is beyond our technology. We can't break free in 3 days. Maybe not ever. Dr. Nira Helix stepped forward, displaying biological readings from the planet's surface. The ecosystem of Virdax is unlike anything we've encountered. It's not just hostile, it's intelligently adaptive. During this Ash Thunder Night, the biological activity will increase 1,000-fold. Without proper shelter and countermeasures, survival is unlikely. Then we fight the collectors when they arrive, suggested another council member. The EOS has weapons. Defensive systems only, Lance countered. We might hold them off briefly, but not defeat them. And our weapons are as disabled as our propulsion. Silence fell over the council as the gravity of their situation sank in. They were trapped between an impossible test and certain extermination. Illyra finally spoke. I believe we must accept Calix's trial. We'll establish a base camp near the pyramid structure. It seems to be shielded from the worst of the planet's hostility. We'll bring down as many people and resources as we can before the Ash Thunder Night begins, and we'll face whatever comes. You're asking us to gamble everything on an alien judgment system that's already destroyed 6 civilizations. The chief engineer protested. I'm asking us to choose a fighting chance over certain death, Illyra corrected. Those 6 civilizations failed. Yes, but we're not them. Humanity has survived against impossible odds before. It's practically our specialty. The vote was far from unanimous, but in the end, the decision was made. The Eos Eternum would deploy its resources to the surface. Not everyone could go. The ship's shuttles could only transport a fraction of the population in the time available. Critical personnel, families with children, and those with skills deemed essential for establishing a colony would go first. The rest would remain aboard, ready to evacuate if the surface team survived the first night. As preparations began, Lance approached Illyra in her quarters. What are we going to do about Tarek? He asked. The traitor had been confined to the brig, but his fate remained undecided. Illyra looked up from the ancient star charts she'd been studying, the same ones that had led them to Virdax. Bring him with us to the surface. Captain, Calix is testing our worthiness as a species, how we treat a traitor who endangered everyone. That's part of the test, I'm sure of it. Lance nodded slowly. And the collectors, when they arrive? We'll deal with that problem when we survive the first one, Illyra said with a conviction she didn't entirely feel. For now, focus on getting our people to the surface. The next 24 hours were a frantic race against time. Shuttle after shuttle descended to Virdax, establishing a perimeter around the pyramid structure. Prefabricated shelters designed for hostile environments were erected, equipment was transported, and defensive measures were put in place, not just against the coming biological storm, but against whatever the Void Collectors might deploy. Dr. Nira Helix led teams of scientists in studying the local ecosystem, desperate to understand what they would face during the Ash Thunder Night. What they discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The entire biosphere is interconnected, she explained to Illyra as they stood at the edge of the camp, watching the metallic forest sway in patterns too regular to be caused by wind. Not just in the way Earth's ecosystems were interconnected through food webs and environmental factors. This is different, more like a single organism with specialized components. Like cells in a body? Illyra asked. More like processors in a biological supercomputer. The plants process and transfer energy. The animals serve as mobile units that respond to threats or opportunities. Even the atmosphere seems to function as a communication medium. And during the Ash Thunder Night, Nira's expression grew grave. From what we can determine, it's like a system reboot combined with an immune response. The entire planet purges anything it considers foreign or incompatible. The radiation spikes. The atmosphere fills with compounds that break down non-native materials, and the mobile life forms become hyper-aggressive toward anything not recognized as part of the system. "How do we survive that?" Illyra asked, the weight of 5,000 lives heavy in her voice. "I don't know if we can," Nira admitted, "but we've discovered something interesting. The pyramid structure, it seems to exist in a different phase state than the rest of the planet, like it's partly here and partly somewhere else. During previous ecological surges, it remained unaffected. So we shelter inside. Calyx hasn't offered that option. I suspect forcing our way in would be considered failing the test." Illyra nodded thoughtfully. "Then we need to find another way. What about the ruins we saw? The previous civilizations that failed? Did they leave anything behind that might help us?" "Actually, yes." Nira brightened slightly. "We've found technological remnants that suggest at least one of the previous species developed countermeasures against the planet's hostility. They ultimately failed, but their technology might give us insights." As the deadline approached, approximately 2,000 humans had been transported to the surface. The remaining 3,000 stayed aboard the Eos Eternum, watching and waiting. If the surface team survived, they would follow. If not, they would face the Void Collectors alone. The final hours before the Ash Thunder Night were spent in frantic preparation. Based on Nira's research and the technological fragments recovered from previous civilizations, they constructed a series of resonance barriers, devices that would emit frequencies that might confuse or repel the planet's aggressive elements. Lance and his security teams established defensive positions, not knowing whether the greatest threat would come from the planet itself or from the Void Collectors who would arrive during the chaos. As the sun of Virdax began to set, casting long shadows across their encampment, Illyra gathered the colonists. Behind them, the pyramid structure loomed silent and dark, its ancient guardian watching but not interfering. "Tonight, we face judgment," Illyra told her people, "not just from Calyx or this planet, but from history itself. We are the last free humans. What we do here will determine whether our species has a future." She looked out at the faces before her, tired, afraid, but resolute. "The test begins at nightfall. Stay inside the resonance barriers. Protect each other. Remember who we are and what we've survived to reach this point. Humanity has faced extinction before and prevailed. We will do so again." As darkness fell, the first signs of the Ash Thunder Night appeared. The atmosphere took on a purple-green luminescence, clouds forming patterns too geometric to be natural. The ground began to vibrate with a low, constant tremor, as if the entire planet were humming. Then came the ash, not falling from above, but rising from the soil itself. Microscopic particles filled the air, carrying complex compounds that began to react with any non-native materials they contacted. The prefabricated shelters started to corrode at the edges, despite their protective coatings. "Resonance barriers at full power!" Nira shouted over the building roar of the wind, which had begun to circle their camp like a predator stalking prey. The barriers activated, creating dome-like fields that repelled the worst of the ash. Inside their perimeter, the colonists huddled together, watching in horror and awe as Virdax transformed around them. The metallic forest at the edges of their camp underwent a metamorphosis. The trees uprooted themselves, becoming ambulatory. Their branches extended and sharpened, probing the air as if sensing prey. The crystalline creatures they had encountered earlier emerged in packs, now twice their previous size, their maws rotating continuously. Most terrifying was the ground itself. The soil liquefied in places, forming pools that bubbled with caustic compounds. Steam rose from these pools, carrying spores that caused hallucinations in anyone who breathed them without a filter mask. "The barriers won't hold against a direct assault," Lance reported as he joined Elira at the command center. "We need to reduce our perimeter, concentrate our defenses." Elira studied the tactical display, her heart sinking. Their initial camp had been established to house all 5,000 colonists. With only 2,000 present, they were spread too thin, trying to defend too large an area. "Sound the retreat to the inner circle," she ordered. "Abandon the outer shelters." The order was given, and the colonists began a fighting withdrawal to a tighter defensive position. Not everyone made it. The planet seemed to sense their strategy, concentrating its assault on those trying to move between positions. By the time they had established their new perimeter, 37 colonists were dead or missing. As the night deepened, the assault intensified. The resonance barriers flickered under the strain, and portions began to fail. Repair teams worked frantically to reinforce weak points, but they were fighting a losing battle against a planet-wide immune system determined to eliminate them. In the command center, Elira watched the deteriorating situation with growing despair. "We're not going to make it," she realized. "Not all of us." Nira, exhausted from coordinating the scientific teams, looked up from her console. "The resonance barriers are failing faster than we can repair them. At this rate, we'll lose containment entirely in 3 hours." "And we still have 69 hours to go," Lance added grimly. Elira closed her eyes, the weight of decision pressing down on her. When she opened them again, there was a terrible resolve in her gaze. "We need to abandon the outer ring entirely. Concentrate everything on protecting the inner core. Just enough space for 500 people." 500? Nira echoed in disbelief. "But there are 2,000 of us here." "And 3,000 still on the Eos," Elira replied, her voice hollow. "We can't save everyone here, but we can save enough to prove ourselves to Calyx. Enough to secure this world for those who remain." "You're talking about sacrificing 1,500 people," Lance said quietly. "I'm talking about saving 3,500, Elira corrected, though the words tasted like ash in her mouth. "We select the 500 with the skills most critical for establishing a colony. The rest will buy them time." The order was given. Families were separated. Friends were forced to say goodbye. The selection process was as fair as possible under the circumstances, prioritizing diverse skills and knowledge over rank or privilege, but it was still a death sentence for the majority. Those selected for survival retreated to the innermost ring, where all remaining resources were concentrated. The others spread out to the failing outer barriers, knowing they were buying time with their lives. Elira refused to shelter in the inner ring. "My place is with them," she told Lance when he tried to convince her to retreat to safety. "I won't hide while others die on my orders." As the barriers failed one by one, chaos erupted. The planet's defenses swarmed through the breaches, animated vegetation, crystalline predators, and swirling vortices of caustic ash. The colonists fought with everything they had, using improvised weapons and the few functioning energy rifles they had brought from the Eos. Elira moved among them, fighting alongside her people, refusing to abandon anyone until the last possible moment. She watched as colonists fell, some to the planet's assaults, others to the toxic atmosphere when their filters failed. In the final hour before dawn, as the inner ring prepared to seal itself completely, Elira found herself cut off from retreat. A massive rupture in the ground had opened between her position and the final barrier, and the few remaining bridges were collapsing. "Captain!" Lance called from the other side, preparing to venture out to retrieve her. "Stay back," she commanded. "Seal the barrier. That's an order." "We're not leaving you out here." Illyra fired her weapon at an approaching pack of crystalline predators, buying herself a few more seconds. "The mission is what matters. Humanity survives, even if I don't." Before Lance could respond, a new threat emerged. From the sky, cutting through the toxic clouds, came the unmistakable silhouette of a Void Collector vessel. They had arrived exactly as Tarek had promised. "They're here," Illyra whispered, watching as the sleek, predatory craft descended toward the surface. Her communicator crackled with desperate messages from the Eos Eternum, reporting multiple collector vessels surrounding the defenseless generation ship. In that moment of distraction, one of the crystalline creatures lunged at Illyra. She felt a searing pain as its teeth tore through her environmental suit and into her side. The world spun as she fell, the toxic atmosphere immediately beginning to affect her exposed skin. Through blurring vision, she saw the inner barrier finally seal, protecting the 500 colonists inside. She saw the Void Collector ship hovering above the encampment, weapon systems charging. And then, strangest of all, she saw the pyramid structure, Calix's home, begin to glow with an internal light that grew brighter with each passing second. A voice spoke directly into her mind, bypassing her failing senses. Calix's voice. "The judgment is not yet complete. Seventh defendant," it said. "But I have seen enough to recognize a pattern unlike the previous 6. The world around Illyra faded to white, and she felt herself being drawn into the light emanating from the pyramid. The last thing she saw before consciousness fled was the Void Collector ship engulfed in energy, its systems failing just as the Eos Eternums had when they first arrived. Illyra awoke within the pyramid, lying on the same platform where Calix had first appeared to them. Her wounds were healed, though the memory of pain lingered. The entity hovered before her, its form now more distinctly humanoid than before. "You survived," Illyra croaked, her throat raw from the toxic exposure. "As did 523 of your people," Calix replied. "And those aboard your vessel remain unharmed. The Void Collectors have been misdirected. Their sensors now detect nothing of interest in this system." Illyra struggled to sit up. "The trial isn't over. There are still 2 more nights of the Ash Thunder. The trial continues. Yes, but its nature has changed." Calix's form shifted, briefly taking on aspects of Illyra's own appearance before returning to its composite state. "You were presented with an impossible choice. Seventh defendant. Save a few or lose all. Previous civilizations chose to protect their leaders, their strongest, their most privileged. You chose to remain with those sacrificed." "I ordered their deaths," Illyra said bitterly. "I don't deserve praise for dying alongside them." Yet that choice, that capacity for empathy even in the face of necessary sacrifice, is precisely what separates your kind from the previous defendants. Calix's form expanded, filling the chamber with light. The true test was never survival against Virdax's defenses. No civilization could withstand the full force of the Ash Thunder Night. The test was how you faced certain death. Displays activated around the chamber, showing scenes from the battle. Colonists protecting each other rather than fighting for individual survival. Parents ensuring their children reached safety before succumbing to the toxic atmosphere. Scientists sacrificing themselves to preserve crucial data that might help the survivors. The previous 6 civilizations turned on each other when faced with extinction. Calix explained. They devolved into savagery, proving they carried the seeds of their own destruction even in their final moments. Your people demonstrated something else, a capacity for compassion and self-sacrifice that suggests evolutionary potential. Evolutionary potential, Illyra repeated, still trying to process what was happening. The purpose of Vir Dax is not merely to test and judge, but to find worthy successors to the architects, species capable of transcending their biological imperatives, of choosing harmony over dominance. The chambers shifted around them, transforming into a representation of space, stars and galaxies spinning in the void. Your ancestors helped create the Galactic Alliance, but they did so from a position of technological superiority and fear of the unknown. They sought to control rather than understand. When younger species challenged their dominance, conflict was inevitable. Images flashed around them, scenes of an ancient war, humans fighting alongside other advanced species against emerging civilizations. The alliance collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. Calyx continued. Your ancestors' legacy was one of control disguised as cooperation. But you, the descendants who have lost everything, have demonstrated a different path. What happens now? Illyra asked. The trial isn't complete. The collectors will return eventually. Now you make a choice. Calyx's form solidified, becoming more distinctly individualized. Vir Dax can become humanity's sanctuary, but not as you imagined, not as conquerors or even as conventional colonists. This world is a living system, and to survive here, you must become part of it. What does that mean? Integration, adaptation, evolution. Your people will need to forge a new relationship with this ecosystem, not attempting to bend it to your will as your ancestors did with other worlds, but adapting yourselves to exist in harmony with it. Calyx gestured, and the chamber changed again. Showing a vision of the future, human settlements nestled within the living landscape of Vir Dax, structures that merge technology with the planet's biological systems, people whose environmental suits had evolved into something more symbiotic than protective. The remaining nights of the Ash Thunder will still come. Calyx warned, but I can shield your people if they agree to the terms of sanctuary, if they commit to becoming part of Vir Dax rather than merely its inhabitants. Illyra considered the offer. And those who died, the 1,500 who sacrificed themselves, their genetic material, their memories, aspects of their consciousness, these remain, captured by Vir Dax's systems in the moment of transition, not true resurrection, but a form of continuation. Their essence can become part of the foundation of what your species will become here. The idea was both comforting and disturbing, not true survival, but not complete loss either. A transformation into something neither fully human nor fully alien. I can't make this decision alone, Illyra said finally. The survivors, those still aboard the Eos, they all must have a voice. A wise response. Calyx approved. One more indication that your species may succeed where others failed. You shall have time to consult with your people. Days later, as the third and final night of the Ash Thunder subsided, Illyra stood at the edge of the new human settlement. The pyramid structure had transformed, expanding to create a protected zone where the colonists from the Eos Eternum could safely establish themselves. Beyond this zone, Vir Dax remained as deadly as ever, but now there was a path forward. The terms of sanctuary had been accepted. Humanity would remain on Vir Dax, protected from the Void Collectors by the planet's advanced systems. In return, they would commit to a new path of development, one that emphasized harmony with their environment rather than mastery over it. Calyx would serve not as their judge anymore, but as their guide in this transition. The entity had revealed that the architects, the long-vanished creators of Vir Dax, had once been biological beings themselves before transcending to a higher state of existence. The judgment system they left behind was not meant merely to eliminate unworthy species, but to identify and nurture those with the potential to follow a similar path. Illyra watched as the first permanent structures were erected, living buildings that merged human technology with Virdax's biological systems. Nearby, Dr. Naira Helix worked with a team of scientists to understand the biological interfaces that would allow humans to safely interact with the planet's ecosystem without environmental suits. Lance approached, his expression troubled. The Council has been discussing leadership structures for the colony. And, Illyra asked, though she suspected what was coming, they want you to continue as leader, captain of the ground. Illyra shook her head. No, my role was to bring our people here, to face the judgment. That chapter is closed. She touched the wound at her side, healed, but leaving a strange, crystalline scar that sometimes seemed to pulse in rhythm with the planet beneath them. We need a new kind of leadership for what comes next. What will you do? Lance asked. Illyra gazed toward the horizon, where the metallic forest swayed in patterns that were beginning to make sense to her. Calyx has offered to show me the memories, the records of the 6 civilizations that came before us, their achievements, their failures. There are lessons there that might help us avoid their fate. You trust it? After everything that happened? Trust is too simple a word for what we're building here. Illyra replied, Calyx is part of Virdax, and Virdax is becoming part of us. The boundary between judge and judged is blurring. In the distance, the pyramid pulsed with light, as if in response to her words. The structure had become both sanctuary and symbol, a reminder of the test humanity had faced and the transformation they had chosen to embrace. Tarek, the traitor who had summoned the Void Collectors, had been given a choice as well: execution for his crimes, or integration into Virdax systems, becoming part of the collective consciousness that would help guide humanity's adaptation. He had chosen the latter, perhaps hoping for redemption, perhaps simply fearing death. The Eos Eternum remained in orbit, transformed into a station that would facilitate the gradual relocation of all humans to the surface. Its vast hull, once a nomadic home for the last free humans, would eventually be repurposed, its materials integrated into the new civilization, taking root below. As night fell, Illyra stood alone at the edge of the settlement, watching as bioluminescent patterns spread across the landscape, not the deadly glow of the ash thunder night, but a gentler radiance that seemed almost welcoming. Calyx materialized beside her, its form now consistently humanoid, though still composed of light and energy rather than flesh. The Void Collectors have left this sector, the entity reported. Their memory of this system has been adjusted. They believe it contains nothing of value. How long will that protection last? Illyra asked. Long enough for your people to complete the first stage of adaptation. After that, you will have defenses of your own, not weapons as you once built, but systems that work with Virdax rather than against it. Illyra nodded, then asked the question that had been troubling her since accepting Calyx's offer. Are we still human? Will we remain human through these changes? Calyx's form shimmered thoughtfully. You ask a question of identity that has no simple answer. The humans who first achieved interstellar travel would hardly recognize those who formed the Galactic Alliance. Those Alliance humans would see the refugees of the Eos Eternum as alien in many ways. Change is inevitable. That's not an answer. No, Calyx agreed. But perhaps the question itself reveals a lingering attachment to boundaries and definitions that must evolve. What makes humanity worthy of continuation is not your physical form or your technological achievements, but your capacity for empathy, for self-sacrifice, for choosing connection over isolation even in your darkest moments. The entity gestured toward the settlement, where humans were gathering for their evening meal, sharing food, stories, planning for a future none of them had imagined just days before. Those qualities will remain, whatever physical or cognitive changes occur. That seventh defendant is what it means to pass the judgment of Vir Dax, not to remain unchanged, but to change in ways that preserve your essential worthiness. Illyra considered this, watching as the first stars appeared in the alien sky above. The future was uncertain, the path forward unclear. Humanity had been judged and found worthy, not of dominion, but of transformation, not of conquest, but of communion. It was not the salvation she had sought when guiding the Eos Aeternum to these coordinates. It was not the victory over extinction that she had imagined, but perhaps it was something more profound, not merely survival, but evolution. Not an ending, but a transcendence. The last human ship had docked on the legendary Deathworld, and humanity as it had been would never leave. What would emerge in its place remained to be written, a new chapter in an ancient story, a seventh civilization that might succeed where six had failed. As Illyra turned to rejoin her people, the light of distant stars reflected in her eyes, which now held flecks of the same crystalline material that marked her wounded side, the first visible sign of the changes to come.